At Money in the Bank 2024, John Cena announced his retirement from the WWE in the form of a retirement tour that will last from January to December of 2025. He said he'll be competing throughout the year on Raw, SmackDown, and premium live events, with WrestleMania being his last WrestleMania and his last match taking place in December. It's a bittersweet feeling knowing that one day John Cena will not be a professional wrestler anymore, but for this last year that we have with him, I think it would be a lot of fun to fantasy book what John Cena's last year in the WWE would look like. Of course, John Cena has given a lot to the business and deserves to go out his own way, but as a fan, I think it would just be a lot of fun to say what I would like to see from Cena in his last run. I'm Josh from Just MASH. Let's figure it out. January. So I'm going to take this month by month, go through each month of the year, and figure out what I think John Cena will be doing throughout the months. I think January is going to be a light January for John Cena, mainly because the Royal Rumble this year takes place on February 1st, and I keep kind of having this inner conflict about whether I would want to save Cena's return for the Royal Rumble or have him have some matches on Raw or SmackDown in the build-up. Ultimately, I decided to have him have one match in the build-up to the Rumble with a tag team match on Raw or SmackDown against A-Town Down Under, Austin Theory, and Grayson Waller. Cena's partner in this doesn't really matter. You could say it's Cody Rhodes, you could say it's Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, I picked A-Town Down Under as his opponents because it closes up a few storyline gaps. At Money in the Bank 2023, Grayson Waller and John Cena had an in-ring segment where they talked and went back and forth. I think having this match with Cena versus Grayson Waller would close that story up, and it would give Cena some opportunity to get some payback against Austin Theory for their WrestleMania 39 match, which ultimately wasn't well received, and it would give Cena the chance to get his win back. February. I think John Cena is going to enter the Royal Rumble, and one of two things will happen. One, he either enters earlier in the match or midway through the match and wins the Royal Rumble, going on to WrestleMania for the world title, or he enters at number 30 and pays homage to the time that he won the Royal Rumble, but ultimately comes up short. I think for what I'm going with here, I'm going to say that John Cena enters around number 22, 23, and wins the Royal Rumble, and announces his intentions to face Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event of WrestleMania 41 Night 1. Until then, though, he's got to have something to do, so I think February for John Cena looks like it will be taken up by a feud with the Judgment Day. I think on Raw we will get various forms of Cena tagging with Damian Priest and Jey Uso against Finn, Dominic, JD, and Carlito. Ultimately, this will culminate at the March pay-per-view Elimination Chamber. March. At Elimination Chamber, I think John Cena faces Dominic Mysterio. I picked Dominic over Finn here because I think that ultimately Dominic is a bit more over with the audience right now in terms of being a bad guy that is hated. John Cena ultimately being somebody that is loved. I think that this match will be carried by the audience reaction, and ultimately Cena defeats Dominic Mysterio. After that, the feud with Gunther is going to kick off big time, and we're going to get a lot of great promos between Cena and Gunther detailing what their feud is all about. April. In the build to WrestleMania, I think we will see John Cena versus Ludwig Kaiser on Raw, with Cena getting the win, but ultimately this is a warm-up for the WrestleMania match against Gunther. At WrestleMania Night 1 in the main event, I think John Cena defeats Gunther to win the World Heavyweight Championship, thus kicking off the Summer of Cena. I think this title reign will be an open challenge run where he faces a lot of people from his past and wrestlers he's never faced before, similar to his U.S. title reign in 2015. The first match of that open title run being against Kofi Kingston, which is a first-time matchup that we've never actually gotten before in WWE. I think it's Raw after WrestleMania, John Cena versus Kofi Kingston, first-time matchup, and I think Cena ultimately wins, retaining his title. May. Now, WWE haven't really announced what their 2025 premium live event schedule is, so I'm just going to kind of guess it and say there's one a month. I know it varies usually, but for the purpose of this, we'll say there's one a month. In the month of May, I think two people that will answer the Cena Open Challenge will be Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, both members of DIY. I'm a huge DIY fan. I was a huge NXT Black and Gold fan from 2015 to 2019, so it would mean a lot to me to see Cena versus Gargano and Cena versus Ciampa, obviously with Cena beating both of them, but I think it would be both great matches. Ultimately, the PLE match that month I think would be against Bronson Reed. Reed is on a tear right now, wrestling Seth Rollins, The Miz, and Braun Strowman, and I think that's something that will continue to where he would face John Cena on pay-per-view. Ultimately, of course, John Cena wins this and continues his Summer of Cena. June. For June, I think we get John Cena versus Chad Gable on Raw in an open challenge, which would be a really great showing for Chad Gable and a really good opportunity for him to show his heel work against a major star like John Cena. I think it would be really cool if there were shades of Cena versus Kurt Angle inside of Cena versus Chad Gable, because Gable and Angle, while very different, are also very similar competitors. Ultimately, John Cena gets the win here. I'm going to take a guess and say that the PLE that month is a Saudi show, so I think for storytelling purposes, it would make sense to do John Cena versus Solo Sikoa for the World Heavyweight Championship. This would kind of call back to their first match together at Saudi in 2023, where Solo absolutely squashed John Cena. I think Cena would get his win back here, and a good showing for Solo, but ultimately showing who Cena is as a wrestler and defeating Solo and retaining the title. Now, another match I want to do it this month, I'm not sure when, and I'm not really sure how. It could be before, it could be in a tag, it could be after, but John Cena versus Jacob Fatu in some way. Ultimately, I don't see Cena defeating Jacob Fatu clean here, and I don't see Fatu winning the world title, so I think this match would have to result in a DQ, but this is a match that you want to have happen. July. At some point on Raw, I think we could get John Cena versus the newly called up NXT wrestler Trick Williams. Trick is someone that is massively over on NXT. He's been the NXT champion twice now. I think by July of next year, he'll be on the main roster. So I think having a one-off match with John Cena on Raw would be very good for him. Ultimately, of course, Cena wins, but this is a match that really proves who Trick Williams is and shows why he belongs on the main roster. For the PLE that month, I think we see John Cena versus one of his old rivals, AJ Styles. Cena and AJ have literally never had a bad match against each other, and it was a dream match for a lot of people for a long time when AJ was in TNA and Cena was in WWE. Some of Cena's all-time best matches are against AJ, and I think it only makes sense to do this match one last time on pay-per-view on a grand stage during Cena's last run. Cena would defeat Styles here and retain his world title, which would send him on his way to August and SummerSlam. August. At SummerSlam, we are brought to the end of the summer of Cena, and we're going to end it right where it started, and that is against Gunther. I think Gunther takes the summer off and comes back bigger and better than ever, and ultimately defeats John Cena in the main event of SummerSlam to recapture his World Heavyweight Championship. September. I think after his loss to Gunther, Cena takes some time off and kind of recovers from what the year has been. But ultimately, Cena comes back and wrestles Gunther one last time to finish off their trilogy for the World Heavyweight Championship, where Gunther ultimately wins and defeats Cena. This would be done to solidify Gunther as the monster of WWE and as one of the all-time greats, defeating Cena in 2 out of 3 of their matches and retaining the World Heavyweight Championship. From here, Cena moves on to just random matchups, calling back to the beginning of his career, the middle of his career, the end of his career, and also facing up-and-comers and new people to wrestle. This also changes things a bit because now Cena has the opportunity to lose to these guys without actually putting a world title on them. That starts off with a match against Drew McIntyre, which ultimately I think Drew McIntyre wins. From there, we go into the PLE that month where we see John Cena versus Braun Breaker, and ultimately I think Braun Breaker wins. October. In October, I think it would be another Saudi show, and the Saudi shows like to be these big, gigantic dream matchups. So I think there is where we see John Cena versus Randy Orton one last time. This is a match people have been clamoring for John Cena's last run, and while I personally don't want to see it at WrestleMania like a lot of people do, it is a match that you absolutely have to get to. I think you tell the story of Cena losing to Gunther twice in a row, Drew McIntyre and Braun Breaker, and him thinking, wow, this really is the end of my run, maybe I can't do this anymore. And that's where Randy Orton comes in. You play on the history between the two, all the various times they've wrestled each other, especially on pay-per-view. They have one last match at the Saudi PLE where John Cena defeats Orton and gains his confidence back. November. In November, we'll get John Cena versus Carmelo Hayes on Raw, where Cena gets the win, but it's a good showing for Carmelo. At Survivor Series that year, we'll get John Cena in his first ever War Games match. And ultimately, if they do Saturday night's main event again in November or December, we'll see John Cena versus CM Punk one last time, where Cena will again win. December. December will bring the end of John Cena as an active competitor in the WWE with his final match taking place against Cody Rhodes. I think Cody Rhodes as Cena's last opponent makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, but mainly because of the time-honored tradition in pro wrestling of the gigantic star of one generation passing the baton to the star of the next generation. It's a babyface versus babyface match, but it's a match that could have a lot of story and a lot of character parallels, and ultimately it's one that sets up Cody Rhodes again as the face of the WWE moving forward. Cena is a classic pro wrestler with tradition, so he will follow the tradition of going out on his back and putting someone over in his last match, and I think Cody Rhodes could use the rub almost more than anyone. Now, of course, injuries could get in the way, plans can change, who knows what movies Cena could get in the meantime, but if this were to be Cena's last year, the way that I laid it out, I think it would be a pretty good run from Cena and would touch a lot of the dream matches that people want from Cena. If you like what my plans for John Cena are, let us know in the comments below. If you dislike them or have your own plans for John Cena, let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel because that absolutely helps us out. And I've been Josh from Just Mash. Until next time.